What if the reason we're still burning jet fuel, still launching rockets with controlled explosions, still paying for gasoline, is not because we haven't figured out how to escape gravity? What if it's because someone already did? What if the physics that would free us from this planet, free us from fossil fuels, from expensive space travel, from the very weight of existence, has been sitting in a classified file cabinet since the 1950s? That's not a conspiracy theory. That's a documented research trail. And the sky? The sky has been building toward the moment that trail finally goes public. I'm going to show you the research. I'm going to show you the patents. I'm going to show you the names and agencies. And then I'm going to show you exactly what's written in the stars for 2025 and 2026. Because 3 outer planets are aligning in a way that happens once in a human lifetime. And what they're describing is the end of a secret. Let's start with what we know for certain. In the 1950s, the U.S. Air Force launched Project Winter Haven, a classified investigation into electrogravitic propulsion. The premise? That electromagnetic fields could be used to counteract gravity. The program was real. The documents are real. And after a brief declassification window, they largely disappeared again. In 1996, NASA created the Breakthrough Propulsion Physics Program, a federal effort to explore propulsion technologies that operated outside the known laws of physics, including anti-gravity concepts. They ran it for 6 years, funded it with taxpayer money, and then quietly shut it down in 2002. Their conclusion? Anti-gravity concepts were categorized as non-viable. But here's the thing. So many proposals were submitted that NASA had to develop a screening guide just to manage the volume. You don't create a screening guide for something people aren't taking seriously. Then, in November 2020, something extraordinary happened. A group of scientists from NASA, DARPA, MIT, and the U.S. Air Force began meeting monthly, on Zoom, during a global pandemic, to discuss what they called alternative propulsion. The meeting series became known as APEC, the Alternative Propulsion Engineering Conference. One attendee described it as the Woodstock of gravity modification research. But perhaps the most stunning piece of evidence is the Navy's own patent record. Dr. Salvatore Cesar Pais, an aerospace engineer at the Naval Air Warfare Center, filed a series of patents so unusual that the patent office initially rejected them. The Navy's own chief technology officer then wrote a letter insisting the inventions were operable. The patents were granted. What were those patents? A craft using an inertial mass reduction device, a high-frequency gravitational wave generator, a compact fusion reactor, a hybrid aerospace undersea vehicle capable of traveling through air, water, and space at speeds that defy conventional physics. The patent for the gravity manipulation craft described technology that could, in the Navy's own language, engineer the fabric of our reality at the most fundamental level. Read that again. The United States Navy filed a patent to engineer the fabric of reality. And then, quietly, with no announcement, that patent expired in January 2023. Non-payment of maintenance fees, as if someone decided it was better to let it lapse than to keep it in the public record. Meanwhile, in April 2025, a former NASA engineer named Charles Buhler, who spent years at Kennedy Space Center, announced that his company, Exodus Propulsion Technologies, had developed what he called a new force, thrust generated through electric fields alone, with no propellant, no combustion, no exhaust. If verified, it would overturn Newton. It would overturn everything. 70 years of classified research, government patents for gravity drives, monthly secret meetings between military scientists and aerospace engineers. And now, a former NASA insider claiming he's cracked propellantless propulsion. And the stars said, this is exactly on schedule. On July 7th, 2025, Uranus left Taurus, where it had spent 7 years destabilizing economies, food systems, and material values, and entered Gemini. It makes its permanent ingress on April 26th, 2026, where it will stay until 2033. Uranus is the planet of sudden revelation, of lightning bolt breakthroughs, of the thing that was always true suddenly becoming undeniable. It rules technology, electricity, rebellion against established systems, and the moment that banned knowledge becomes common knowledge. Gemini rules information, communication, the sharing of ideas, the circulation of data. It is the sign of the messenger, the journalist, the whistleblower, the leak. When Uranus moves through Gemini, suppressed information doesn't stay suppressed. The last time Uranus was in Gemini was 1941 to 1949, a period that produced the first electronic computers, cracked the Enigma code, and saw classified military research programs reshape the entire landscape of physics. Sound familiar? What Uranus in Gemini says to hidden scientific knowledge is, your time is up. What it says to the people holding the secrets is, the signal is getting out anyway. And what it says to the rest of us is, prepare for information that will rewrite the textbooks. But Uranus isn't working alone this time. In February 2026, Saturn and Neptune form an exact conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, the absolute beginning of the zodiac. 0 Aries is not just a degree, it's a reset point, the vernal equinox, the place where everything begins again. Saturn is structure, laws, institutions, the walls that keep secrets contained. Neptune is dissolution, the fog, the veil, the boundary between what is known and what is hidden. When Saturn conjuncts Neptune, the walls dissolve, the fog lifts, and the things that governments and institutions have maintained through rigid control become suddenly impossible to contain. The Russian Revolution happened under a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. The Berlin Wall fell under a Saturn-Neptune conjunction. These aren't coincidences. These are the moments when Saturn's grip on a secret can no longer withstand Neptune's pull toward truth. At 0 Aries, the absolute starting point, this conjunction isn't just about dissolution. It's about new laws being written, new science being established. The old framework of physics isn't being updated, it's being replaced. And then there's Pluto. Pluto entered Aquarius in 2024 and will remain there until 2044. 20 years. Aquarius rules technology, collective systems, scientific progress, and, critically, the question of who controls knowledge and who is kept in the dark. Pluto is the planet of what has been buried, of power structures that operate in secret, of the underworld. In this context, the classified underworld of black budget programs, above top secret research facilities, and technology that was deemed too powerful for public consumption. Pluto in Aquarius exposes the shadow side of technological power. It asks, who has been hoarding this? Who decided the rest of humanity didn't deserve to know? And it does what Pluto always does. It drags what's buried back to the surface. 3 planets. 3 simultaneous transits. Uranus in Gemini says, the information is leaking. Saturn-Neptune at 0 Aries says, the institutional walls are coming down. Pluto in Aquarius says, the buried technology is being unearthed. If you were designing an astrological signature for the public disclosure of suppressed physics, you could not design a more precise one than what we are living through right now. Here's what this means. We may be approaching, within this decade, the public acknowledgement that propellant-free propulsion is real. That gravity manipulation has been researched and possibly achieved. That the physics you were taught in school was always incomplete. The patents are already in the public record. The scientists are already meeting. The former NASA engineers are already speaking. The disclosure pipeline is already open. What the stars are telling us is that the dam is about to break. Uranus in Gemini will spend the next 7 years electrifying the communication channels through which this information travels. Every whistleblower, every leaked document, every fringe scientist who suddenly gets mainstream credibility. That is Uranus in Gemini doing its work. The Saturn-Neptune conjunction is the moment the official story starts to crack. When the institutions that have held the line on this is impossible can no longer maintain that position. When peer-reviewed journals publish what was once only discussed in classified briefings. And Pluto in Aquarius is the 20-year process of power redistribution that follows. Because anti-gravity technology, if real and released, doesn't just change transportation. It changes everything. Energy, defense, geopolitics, the entire fossil fuel economy. Every power structure built on the assumption that gravity cannot be defeated becomes obsolete overnight, which is exactly why it's been suppressed. The cosmos doesn't lie. Astrology doesn't have an agenda. It just describes what is and what is coming. And right now, astrology is describing the end of the most consequential secret in human history.